Holy smokes, it's like we've been given a brand new camera. Let's get into it. Today, the Canon EOS R5 received a huge firmware update, finally bringing some much requested video features to this full-frame mirrorless camera. Today's release also updated the Canon EOS R6 and EOS 1DX Mark III, but mainly addressed the long requested upgrades to the EOS R5. Here's the three main firmware upgrades: 120p slow motion option in full HD recording, Canon Log 3, finally, thank you Canon, and compressed raw recording modes to help with, the reduction of file sizes. They're the three. They're massive for the R5. I did a quick test with the R5 to see if the camera would overheat when shooting compressed raw internally. The camera ran for about 30 minutes and did not overheat, and it just stopped when it hit the 30-minute record limit. The file that was generated was 430 gig, and for me, that's still pretty big. What would have been nice is if Canon had removed the record time limit. Other manufacturers have already done this to their mirrorless cameras. Besides the record limit staying, all the other additions are welcomed by R5 owners. And I'm glad to see that the R5 can now shoot 4x slow-mo in HD like the R6. The addition of Log 3 to all recording format modes is something that we R5 users have been begging Canon for. And what this means is if you're not shooting RAW and you're still shooting in log, then you're going to have a lot more additional dynamic range compared to the Canon Log 1 format. Sadly for Canon EOS R6 and EOS 1DX Mark III owners, Canon has only promised that the Log 3 format will be supported in a future firmware update. Now there are some other minor updates that are of worthy note. On the R5 and the R6, you now get full support for full-time manual focus on RF lenses, meaning you can manually override the autofocus of Canon lenses simply by turning the focus ring even when you're in servo AF mode. This will allow you to fine-tune your autofocus when in AF. Say you've got the camera's pulling on one point, you want it on another, you can just manually shift it to where you want, without having to switch between manual and autofocus modes. For pro photographers, the firmware update also brings an FTP transfer status to the screen on both the R5 and the 1DX Mark III. This new feature will allow users to see how long it's going to take to transfer their files. The R5 is also getting a new Protect Image Transfer function, which lets you protect your images from being deleted when transferring them via the FTP, which is a pretty cool addition. Last, and the most practical and overlooked feature, is the ability for owners of multiple Canon cameras to save their personalized EOS R5 settings to a memory card, then move those settings and import them onto other camera bodies. For multicam cinema work, this is an indispensable feature and it's going to save crews a huge amount of time on set. Overall, these updates bring a couple of big video upgrades to the Canon EOS R5 and some smaller ones for the R6 and the 1DX Mark III. There is now a clear gap between the R5 and the R6. The omission of Canon Log 3 in the R6 for the time being does make the R5 a much more compelling camera now for video work, especially with the addition of Canon RAW Lite. And while this firmware is fantastic, it doesn't really address everything that we've been asking from Canon. There's still the record limit. Canon hasn't added anything in like pixel shift or anything like that to increase the pixel count that we can get on photography. But these features could be implemented in a future firmware update, so fingers crossed guys. Canon has also released a software upgrade supporting Rosetta on the new M1 Mac computers in the form of their Digital Photo Professional software version 4.14, which will be released in the coming days, as will the EOS Utility version 3.13.20. It's great to see Canon continue its commitment to photographers and videographers by providing these free updates. Has Canon addressed everything we wanted? No, not by a long shot. But at least they're listening and acting on users' requests. Maybe things are finally changing for the better over at Canon HQ. What do you think? Let me know in the comments.